but it's got to be able to. And I'm curious, how much right now is the offensive line impacting play calling?
I don't ever look at it that way. I look at it as who's available and then what's the best way to put those guys in situations where they can make plays. But to ask guys to do something that they can't do, isn't smart either. That's just where are you? Like if you say, hey, we should be a really big zone read team. Well, if your quarterback can't run, then you shouldn't be a zone read team. Is it a good play? That's a great play. But I think it's always your offense is catered to who your personnel is, and then who your personnel is in this league switches on a weekly basis. You could be strong at one point in time up the middle, and then all of a sudden with a couple injuries, you're not. So it's just how you adapt and adjust. And it's the same thing for everybody. There's nobody in the league right now that doesn't have guys out, and you just got to kind of have to deal with it. So it's always based upon who's available really that week as you try to implement a plan. And what do they have? You can say, hey, we think we're going to run the heck out of the ball this week. Well, that's the best thing they do, but they're last in the league in pass defense. So maybe you have to flip your philosophy a little bit that way in terms of because they're banged up. They have 3 or 4 kids in the secondary out, but their D line is outstanding. So how do we take advantage of it that way? So I think it's on a weekly basis in this league, especially it can morph and change all the time. So
how would you assess how the offensive line played?
they battled. I think when you go against Quentin Williams and Kenny and Osa, those are 3 of the better defensive tackles all on the same team. So they attract a lot of attention in there. And then that leaves your tackles by themselves a little bit. So, they battled as well as they could have and they competed. But, obviously there's a reason they traded a first and a second for Quentin. You could tell that immediately when you saw him on the field. And then obviously you traded Micah Parsons for Kenny Clark. So, and Kenny's a really good player. And then obviously Osa's a really good player. And I know him very well because I coached him in college. So, that's just part of the deal in this league. Some teams are stronger up the middle. Some teams are stronger on the edges. It really just depends on who you're facing. But they're battling and playing as hard as they can, and that's the one thing that you ask for all your players is what type of effort are you playing with, and they're playing with great effort right now.
Looking back at the Cowboys game, do you guys wish you? I know Pete said the game plan was to establish more of the play action and pass game early on.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back at it, do you wish you could have?
No, because I thought if you look at the play action and passing game, we went up and down the field with it. So, we only punted 3 times in a game, so I thought we moved the ball offensively. And I think Brock was involved in it, and Gino did a really nice job. And then it's another way to get the balls to the running backs. I think it was Ashton's high for catches in a game, so that's just a part of the process, depending on who you're playing and what you have available to.
And just even though like you guys were playing behind, leading to like you said, leading to more passes.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when you guys do run the ball, whether it was in Dallas or in previous weeks, just struggle to find some type of consistency for positive yardage. I was wondering, is that more just not having 2 of your top offensive linemen on the field?
But that could be a byproduct of it, and then also, like I just said, you got to give credit to the defensive line that you were going against. So, sometimes it's you got to make decisions based upon what do they have available and what do you have available, and saying, is that a good decision in that situation?
Ashton's going to be involved in pass protection again this week. How would you assess how he's done so far, and what are areas in there that you'd like to see him improve?
Yeah, he's like a normal rookie. I think sometimes just making sure because the blitzes in this league are so exotic and way more exotic than they were in college. No one runs option in professional football. So, there are some schemes where there's 7 guys on one side, 1 guy on another. And in college, you couldn't get away with that because they'd run speed option out the back door. But if you do that, your quarterback's probably not going to play very long either. So, with them being the highest paid players in this league, you don't do that. So, just understanding each week the blitz patterns from each team are really specific. And then what most defensive coordinators do is that they put in new blitzes for you in your game that they hadn't shown on tape yet. So you have to make that adjustment. And it's an easier adjustment if you're like, oh, yeah, I saw this last year. I saw this the year before. I saw this, when you got a bank time. Like when we see some looks, Gino's like, oh, I saw that 4 years ago. And when we were playing San Francisco and Robert Saleh did this to us. Like he has a great background because of his experience in it. So Ashton's doing a really good job in terms of the technique and what we're doing. It's just a matter of how much can he get exposed to all the different blitz looks that you're going to get in this league when you play against really good defensive coordinators. And we're playing against an outstanding one this week, and that's why this will be the top defense we face so far this year because Coach Schwartz does an unbelievable job with those guys. And he's got players like Myles Garrett, who's probably the defensive player of the year, playing right now, who's got 15 sacks so far through 10 games. So, we certainly have our work cut out from a pass protection standpoint, but I think he's battled in there and he's getting better every week.
What about strictly as a receiver? You said he has a season high. Just where do you see him developing just as a receiver?
He's the same thing. I think the coverages and how people are playing them, and I'm not sure how much man coverage Ashton saw in college. If you're in the Mountain West, I don't know if he really wanted to play man coverage against someone as talented as Ashton. So you're going to see a lot more zone at the college level. When you get to the NFL level, there are linebackers that are as fast as our running backs, so they're going to match up with them a little bit. So, learning how the nuances and the intricacies of the routes, it's the same as the protection, but you can see him progressing each week from that standpoint.
Ian Thomas is a guy that's getting a lot more. Will you talk about just how you're seeing him evolve in your offense, please?
Yeah, and Ian, when we picked him up last offseason, we were really, really excited about him. Obviously, you look at it and you say, oh, well, you got two tight ends. Well, we lost Brock for 4 or 5 games there, and thank goodness we had Ian here. You know what I mean? So the more he keeps practicing and playing, the more he's involved. When you lost Jacoby, you lost a receiver. Part of the answer is, well, maybe we got an extra tight end, and maybe we'll play a little bit more some tight end formations just because of what we have available to us. So I think whenever we've asked Ian to do anything, I think he's really excelled at it. That was a big catch for us on that second drive there that got us down into the red zone. So I'm really pleased with him. We feel like with Brock, with Mike, and with Ian, we got 3 guys that can really play, and the other guy who's really started to make a name for himself from a special team standpoint, Carter Runyon, is another tight end that's really coming along for us too. So that's probably the position that we have right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that has the most depth, is our tight end position.
We've seen the evolution of more 12 and 13 personnel football wide. What's that the byproduct of? Is it what defenses are doing? Are there just more better tight ends?
I think for I think it's individual, it's different each league, but there's always. It's unique if you just are a fan of football to watch the waves of this offense is doing this, so then how does the defense catch up?
Right.
And then if the defense catches up and has an advantage, so then what is the offense's counter to that? And it kind of goes back and forth where there were a lot more, probably 10 and 11 personnel earlier, getting more speed on the field. Defense combated that by putting more speed on the field. So if you put more speed on the field, then we'll put bigger guys on the field because that's a mismatch for you. And so defenses are moving back to getting bigger, and then I think offenses will probably move in the other direction. It goes back and forth, and it's the fun part of it, But I think I would think the numbers in the league itself are down. The scoring is down. I think the defenses are playing really, really well right now, and I think they've got a pretty good feel for what it is. So people are starting to change it up. I know the Rams a week ago had played, I think 30 of their 67 snaps were in 13 personnel. And they have Puka and Devontae at wide receiver, but they were still in 13
And they
personnel.
were always an 11-man.
Yeah.
11.
And so I also think it's what's available to you. So it's the same thing when you can say, hey, we should go to 13. Well, who are those 3 tight ends, and are they, and where does that match up with what you have receiver-wise? Because that's where the give and the take comes from. There's really usually everybody's got one back, and then who are the other 4 guys? Is it 3 tight ends and 1 receiver? Is it 2 receivers? Is it 3 receivers and 1 tight end? It goes back and forth, but I think the first and foremost for you to play in 12 and play in 13, you better have tight ends that can play in 12 and play in 13. And the more versatile those tight ends are, the more varied the looks you can give to a defense.
When you go up against a guy like Myles Garrett, how much does it help to have Max Crosby for your offensive lineman to go up against throughout the entire season?
Well, Max can't play O-line. We already checked to see if he could do that, but I think we'd tire him out a little bit. But, there's similarities, I think, just because of both they're both tremendous athletes for their size, and I think that's the one thing about Myles that when you look at him, obviously he's a freakish looking guy that, he's 270 something pounds and moves like a linebacker. But then when you watch his movement skill, you're like, there aren't many big people that move that way. So, we going against Max and OTAs and things like that is, I think can help our tackles, in terms of some of those things. But I don't know if there's anybody out there that can really simulate Myles because, as I said, he's got 15 sacks right now, and we're 10 games in. He's on track to set the record in the history of the league for sacks. So, he's as good as we're going to face out there. So that's got a ton of attention for us.
You've talked a lot about what you like about Jordan at center this year. He was at guard last game. Was that more what you liked about Putnam at center?
That was more about what was available to us. So trying to put the best 5 on the field. Obviously, you wish you had no injuries so Jordan could stay at center and we didn't have to make any moves. But, when you start to get where we are with the injuries in the offensive line, it's who's the next best guy to put in the game, and Willie was the next best guy to put in the game. So obviously we're going to put Willie in at center. He's more comfortable at center. And then Jordan has experience at guard, and probably the most experience of anybody on our team at guard. You know, and when we were playing against Quinnen and Kenny and Osa, where they had really good three techniques and guys that lined up on the guard, we felt like having Jordan and the experience at guard was going to help us.
How far away is Caleb, do you think, from being ready?
How far what?
Caleb from being ready?
It could be 2 plays into the game on Sunday. That's you never know. I mean, just because of where we are from a depth standpoint. So, you know, we'll go through training today and training tomorrow and finalize who the 5 guys are going to be. But we're always going to put the 5 best guys out in the field, and that's Pete's philosophy, and I've always agreed with it. It's everything's about competition. You know, it's got to be earned on the playing field. And last week Willie earned it, but he's got to continue to do it this week. And is that the right combination with Willie at center and Jordan at guard? You know, if that is, then so be it. But they all get it. They all get reps during the week, and so, you know, we'll have a finalization of kind of what that lineup will look like tomorrow after practice.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.